90% of the deep fakes online are porn. AI is not just a tool, it's a mirror. And what does it say about us right now? AI actually is not a tool. This is the first time in history that we have created an agent. AI is an agent. It's not a tool. It's an entity that makes decisions and executes them autonomously. There was never such a thing. A gun, you put it in your hand, you pull the trigger. This thing goes out and shoots on its own. Autonomous weapons can decide targets on their own. How are we to relate to all of these new autonomous entities that they look like us, they speak like us, they interact like us, but they're not us? AI is so full of promise and peril. Before you go do anything, think about how many people you're going to help versus how many people you're going to hurt. I'm saying that we need to frame AI. I'm saying that we need to find the ethical frameworks to make sure it's used for good.
Okay. Hello. Hi, I am here today with Mois Navon. I'm so happy to have you at the AI for Leader Summit. Truly, truly honored. For those of you watching who don't know, Mois is a computer engineer, a rabbi, a globally respected speaker, and a voice at the intersection of Torah, technology, and ethics. He not only brings a deeply spiritual wisdom to his work, but also serves as an advisor to the Israeli government on matters of AI and morality, which I think is incredible. His presence here is more than informational, it's transformational because Moise challenges the assumption that AI is neutral and reminds us that every system we build is a reflection of who we are and what we believe, which is so aligned with this summit. Moise, thank you again for being here. I'm really, really thrilled. I would love if you would share a little bit about your background and what you would like to bring today to our audience.
Sure. So originally I'm from Los Angeles. I grew up a secular Jew, but I always had the big questions of philosophy running in the back of my mind. Why are we here and how are we to live? It took me a while to get onto the philosophical aspects of life. I went through my childhood and through university, basically being interested in science, technology, engineering. I got my degree in engineering at UCLA. But there, I also ran into people that were religious Jews, and I learned that there's more to life than just designing chips. And so I started getting, more of my big questions had responses, answers, ideas. And so I started to develop that aspect of myself as well. And that brought me to become a religious Jew. And I moved with my wife to Israel, and then I became a rabbi. And then along the way, I also got my PhD in Jewish philosophy, where I combined these two worlds and I wrote about the moral status of artificial intelligence. Basically, how are we to relate to all of these new autonomous entities they look like us, they speak like us, they interact like us, but they're not us. So what do we do about that? And then, of course, all the other big ethical questions about autonomous weapons, autonomous vehicles, privacy, security, all of these things I deal with actually in a course I teach to engineers at Ben Gurion University. So that's where my world is at, and I'm happy to be here to try to add to the conversation that you're bringing forth.
Thank you. I'm so glad you are because, wow, that's really impressive. I knew some of that, but not all of it. And it's really, really interesting. So we'll just jump right into the questions and I'll start with the, I don't know, I'm just so excited that you're here. So you have spoken about AI through the lens of Jewish ethics, as you mentioned. And what core teachings do you feel most urgently apply in this moment of rapid development that we are experiencing?
Right. So I think that the answer to the question is really true, whether it's rapid development or slow development, this whole technological development. Really, Judaism brings, I think, a very powerful idea. If you want to say one core teaching, it's good for human intelligence and artificial intelligence. It's called love your neighbor as yourself. Rabbi Akiva famously said that this is the whole Torah, go now and learn. And I think that what he meant by that is that love your neighbor as yourself. We can all kind of identify with it. It's said to be at the core of many, many moral approaches, secular and religious, Christian and Jewish. And I think the reason for that is that if you look at the structure of moral philosophy, so there are three layers. The first layer is what they call meta ethics. It's above ethics. It talks about ethics, like what is ethics and how do we get to what the definition of right and wrong is, and how do we get people to do what's right and wrong, and are these definitions inherent or are they instrumental? Are they just, do we not lie because it's better to live like that, or is lying inherently bad? So all these kinds of questions are what's called meta ethics. We didn't actually say what to do at this point. We're just talking about ethics, right? I think a good example of a meta-ethical statement from the Torah is Aseh et hatov vayashar, do the good and the right. Or, there's another one, Sur meirav aseh tov, don't do bad and do good. So great, those are like, okay, we get it, but what do you want from me? Right? So then we go down a level and then we get to what's called normative ethics. And that's where we talk about principles that we want to base our ethical values on. So V'ahavta l'orecha kamocha, love your neighbor as yourself, is a normative principle. What that means is that we should be able to derive all of our actions based on this sentence, or we should be able to align what we are doing with that principle. Okay, so like I can give you a secular example, utilitarianism. So Jeremy Bentham famously said, "What the making the most people the most happy is the measure of right and wrong." So now he's giving you this principle that says before you go do anything, think about how many people you're going to help versus how many people you're going to hurt, and you're going to make a decision to maximize the good. So you can start deriving actual actions from that statement. The same idea, love your neighbor as yourself, doesn't tell you explicitly what to do, but you can figure out from that you shouldn't lie and you shouldn't steal and you shouldn't murder because you don't want people doing that to you, etc. So that's normative ethics, and that's why I say love your neighbor is really, if you ask me, a core teaching. That's what we should be trying to align, whether we're doing things as people or as machines or developing them, etc. And that finally, brings the third level, which is applied ethics, which means don't murder, don't steal, right? Develop technology so that they help people, et cetera, et cetera. So just to wrap up that one question, is that in my work that I bring Jewish teachings to technology and technology ethics. So I try to apply that in general, but also, you can look at, Judaism has been talking about ethics for thousands of years before anybody else was. And it's not like we're a book on the shelf. It's constantly, generation after generation, being reapplied and rediscussed and expanded and developed. And so I bring the Rambam to talk about how we should interact with ChatGPT. I bring the Abarbanel to talk about how we should be using autonomous weapons. I bring the Golem to talk about if we should be making conscious robots. So all of this is within, the realm of Jewish ethics.
So interesting. So interesting. And it's really exciting to me that there are people like you who are bringing these conversations and not just looking straight at, technology and let's do 1,000 times more in 10% of the time. So I think that's really, really wonderful. And you're doing something so important. I'm
Thank you.
thrilled. Yeah. So next we'll go to I know, many people assume AI is really neutral and just purely technical, which I myself do not believe. And one of the things I love is that you challenge that as well. So can you share why values and moral frameworks are truly essential to how we build and use AI?
Yes. So it's a great question. First of all, I think that I need to point out that, I am not the person who came up with this idea that technology is not neutral. I think, it's throughout the philosophy, basically the history of the philosophy of technology. This idea has come to fruition in modern times with names like Don Ide and Bruno Latour and Peter Paul Verbeek. These are all like, in the past generations. Peter Paul Verbeek is very active right now. And they talk about why technology is not neutral. So why did we think it was neutral in the first place? Well, because if you look at the world, so let's take a knife, for example. A knife doesn't do anything. It's just there. It's a piece, if we could say, of primitive technology, basic technology, and it allows you to kill people or to operate them on and save their lives. So you can use it either way. It doesn't have a moral polarity of its own. It is what the person does with it. It's neutral. So modern philosophers challenge that, not because what I just said isn't true, but because technology does a lot more than just sit there on the shelf waiting for somebody to do something. What it does is it influences our actions. It gives us what they call affordances. Before I had a knife, so what could I do? I could punch somebody. I couldn't stab them. So it's afforded me to do something far greater, whether it good or bad, right? If I didn't have a knife, I also couldn't operate as a doctor. So Bruno Latour likes to bring this example of the guns. So in America, there was the gun advocates who say guns don't kill people, people kill people, right? And then there's the counter slogan that say actually guns do kill people, right? So he makes fun of both of those. He says it's not that people kill people or guns kill people. The fact of the matter, it's people with guns that kill people. And so it's the combination. And so what he likes to say is a man without a gun is very different than a man with a gun. And the gun in the drawer is very different than the gun in the hand. And the two influence each other. The two basically afford a new world. And why that's so important, it's not just semantics, is that means that with all of our technologies, and especially with AI that's getting into every corner of our lives, we need to realize that we are influencing the way people live. We are giving people affordances that they didn't have before, for the good and for the bad. And what that means is that when we say technology is not neutral, we're not saying that the technology just jumps up and does whatever it wants. What we're saying is that humanity has to think about what kind of technology they're bringing forth, both from the designers, the engineers, to really from before them, from the venture capitalists who are funding new ideas, and to the all the way to the end, to the sales and marketing people that are deploying the whole spectrum of design, development, and deployment needs to be thought about ethically, because you are now bringing affordances to people that they didn't have before. I'll give you a great example that Peter Paul Verbeek loves to use, and that's the ultrasound. So the ultrasound really, I mean, if you think of it as a neutral tool, so okay, doctors developed it and it's supposed to save lives. It allows the people, the doctors, to see if the baby's healthy, and we can already start preparing and do all kinds of great things that nobody has any issues with. The thing is that humanity tends to take technology and use them for ways that the developers never thought of. And so, did you know that over 23 million girls have been aborted since the invention of the ultrasound because of sex selection? The ratio of males to females in China is completely off kilter because of abortions. Now, I'm not saying at all that we shouldn't have developed the ultrasound. What I am saying is that we need to be aware that we are bringing technologies that allow people to do things that maybe we don't think are so good. And so those technologies need to be regulated. First of all, we need to think about how we're designing them, to design them with guardrails, to design them to be used for good. That's the whole idea of AI for good. But even without that, we still need to regulate. We need to say, okay, this is not a good use, or this is an illegal use. I'll give you a more modern example, and that's deep fakes. So deep fakes, for those of you who aren't aware, means you can take a picture, a voice of somebody, and you can bring them to life, and they can basically look like that person and sound like that person. So there are a lot of great uses. First of all, the technology is just amazing, image processing and all kinds of stuff, and voice processing. I wouldn't ever say that we shouldn't develop that technology. I'm definitely a technological optimist. Nevertheless, there are terrible uses. 90% of the deep fakes online are porn. And not just porn for fun. Porn, like you take the head of a famous actress and put her on a porn movie, or at least the actresses can say that's not me. Now they're using it, they're taking high school girls and they're ruining reputations, and it's a terrible thing which needs to be regulated. There's also the thievery that's going on. That there's all kinds of cases where somebody uses a kid's voice and says, "Dad, I'm in trouble, send money," and they do. I mean, there's literally billions of dollars of theft because of deep fake, just voice deep fakes.
Unbelievable. And so those are some incredible statistics and perspectives that I had not thought about before. And I really appreciate you bringing these to to more audiences. It's really important stuff that you are bringing. And speaking of tools and AI as a tool, so our summit is really rooted in that belief that AI is not just a tool, it's a mirror. It's something that I teach all the time, and I really encourage people to understand. So what do you think it reflects about us right now? I mean, you shared some of those unfortunate ways that people are using AI, but uh, beyond that, what do you think it's really reflecting back to us?
Right. So, okay. So, first of all, I want to emphasize that AI is a great thing. I mean, it's doing wonders for the world and it's going to do more wonders. And I'm not one of those people that say ban AI. I'm saying that we need to frame AI. I'm saying that we need to find the ethical frameworks to make sure it's used for good. Now, you asked basically two things. One is, AI is not just a tool, it's a mirror. And what does it say about us right now? So I want to sort of break that down. And first of all, say that AI actually is not a tool. Um, Yuval Noah Harari said recently that this is the first time in history that we have created an agent. AI is an agent. It's not a tool. It's an entity that
Hmm.
makes decisions and executes them autonomously. There was never such a thing. A gun, you put it in your hand, you pull the trigger. This thing goes out and shoots on its own. Autonomous weapons can decide targets on their own. So I'm not saying that's good or bad. I'm saying that's not a tool. Okay, so that's the first thing. The second thing is like, what does AI say about us? I think that what AI says about us is really what all of technology throughout human history says about us. And that is what there's a philosopher by the name of Ted Peters, and he says that we are Homo faber. We are not just Homo sapiens, we are Homo faber. We are the entities that create stuff. Okay, we want to make technology. We are Homo faber is like basically the technological being. We make technology. And why do we do that? So I believe if you look at it from a religious perspective, so God put us in the Garden of Eden. He said, have a nice time, right? Basically, he said, you can enjoy your life here. Just don't do the one thing that I said. Don't eat from this tree, which is basically the tree of knowledge of good and evil, is basically the tree of morality, knowing between good and evil. And either God decides what's good and evil or you decide. So humanity has a very hard time of accepting what's right and wrong from the outside. We always have to decide ourselves. And that's what the story of Adam and Eve is. God said, don't do it. And man said, no, looks good, feels good, tastes good, I'm doing it. And so that's the beginning of human history. But we want to get back to the Garden of Eden. So there's two ways to do that. One is to become more moral and accept that there's an objective morality because there's a creator who gave us at least a framework of what's right and wrong. But also to remove the curse of Adam. What was the curse of Adam? To work by the sweat of your brow. All of technology has been trying to reverse the curse. We don't want to work. We want to enjoy the Garden of Eden. And that's what technology is about. And what's really amazing about this is that God is interested in us doing that too. How do I know? From Noah. So, Noah, what does Noah mean? Noah means comfort. And the Torah itself says that he's called Noah because he brought us comfort from Itzavon Yadenu, from the terrible, difficult labor of our hands. Okay, before Noah came along, we were basically digging in the ground and trying to plant stuff and trying to chase animals and doing whatever we could to eat. We spent all day trying to gather food. When did this stop? with the invention of the plow. So the commentators, based on our midrashim, say that Noah was called the comforter because he invented the plow and gave us comfort from our work. Now, beside the fact that this aligns with the history of science, there's a historian of science by the name of James Burke. And he has a wonderful video, I think it's from like the 70s or 80s, but it's on YouTube, where he goes through and he explains, the history of technology. And he says, the trigger of modern civilization was the plow. He said, if we, God forbid, the world exploded and there were a few survivors, the first thing that you would have to do to begin to rebuild society, rebuild civilization, is you'd have to figure out how to make a plow. Because that's the first thing that you can do. Now you can start making food in quantity, and then you start developing storage systems. And because you need to store the food, you need to write when it's from and who belongs to it. And then you need to develop guards, and all of civilization started with the plow. And so that's why I believe that God chose Noah to start over, because he was the guy who knew how to make the plow. He was the guy he was a good person. He was a tzaddik. He helped the people. He helped the animals. But he also had the knowledge of how to get society running with technology. And so what I'm saying in this is that AI, what AI says about us is that we are technological beings, and we need to be technological beings because we want to reverse the curse of Adam. We want to stop working. And the fact of the matter is that there are already surveys now that believe that AI is basically going to do all the work of humanity within 100 years. No one's going to work, which, by the way, also aligns with many biblical prophecies of end of days. But in any case, yeah, the goal is to go back to the Garden of Eden. And so AI is basically that quote unquote tool. It's that vehicle that's going to bring us there. The question is, are we going to destroy ourselves in the process? And that's a different issue.
That is a big question, and we'll save that for another time because I'm sure we
Okay.
could go on about that forever. But wow, wow. And I'm definitely going to go and look at that for that YouTube video. Really
Okay.
fascinating. Thank you. So, so along those lines, tell me, in your view, how do Jewish teachings really help us navigate? And we've hit on this a little bit already, but how do they help us navigate the concept of human dignity in this AI powered world?
Right. So I think that human dignity an incredibly important concept. It's an important concept that really drives much of secular ethics. And it's also a concept within Jewish ethics that's known as kvod habriut. And kvod habriut, basically human dignity, even overrides all kinds of rabbinic prohibitions in order that people should maintain their dignity. But I think that the best way to look at human dignity is through the eyes of Rav Soloveitchik and his book called The Lonely Man of Faith. So there, he famously talks about two types of people. There's Adam 1 and Adam 2. So Adam 1 is the Adam that was created in chapter 1 of Genesis, and Adam 2 is the Adam that was created in chapter 2. If you read through those chapters, they're not very long, they're very different, and they describe two very different beings. Adam 1 was commanded, conquer the world, right? Adam 2 was commanded, don't eat from the tree. And Adam 1, we don't really hear about how he was made. Adam 2, we hear that he comes from the dust and he has the soul blown into him. So Adam 1 is the engineer, the entrepreneur, the businessman, the doctor, the lawyer, the person who wants to go out and conquer the world in a good way. And there's Adam 2 is more of the spiritual individual who's trying to figure out, why am I here and how am I supposed to live and what is ethics and how do we combine those? And they're two very separate beings. But really, human dignity is the combination of both of them. Human dignity is by bringing Adam 1, who wants to conquer the world and make it a better place, and Adam 2, who wants to make sure that he doesn't destroy it in the process. And human dignity is really about living a better life. Rav Soloveitchik, he talks about human dignity as follows. I'll just give you a little quote. Man of old who could not fight disease and succumbed in multitudes to yellow fever or other plagues with degrading helplessness could not lay claim to dignity. Only the man who builds hospitals, discovers therapeutic techniques, and saves lives is blessed with dignity. Man of the 17th and 18th century who needed several days to travel from Boston to New York was less dignified than modern man who attempts to conquer space, boards a plane at New York airport at midnight, and takes several hours later a leisurely walk along the streets of London. So basically, what he's saying is that human dignity is also about making life better physically, that we live better, that we live healthier, that I mean, again, it's the idea, I believe, of reversing the curse of Adam and bringing us back to the Garden of Eden. We are trying to build that with technology, but it has to go hand in hand with Adam too. Rav Soloveitchik is very clear that these two chapters are not written by two people. They are written by the same hand, by the same God that created one individual with two aspects. We all of us have Adam 1, we want to get out there and do things, and Adam 2 that wants answers and wants to be doing the right thing, etc. And so we really need to try to combine those two if we want to be concerned with human dignity in an AI powered world.
So fascinating and important. It's, uh, it's it's true, and there's just these two pieces. I think most people, feel that they have these kind of two two different aspects of themselves dueling, and so it's interesting to hear you speak in that way. Um, so we'll close up pretty soon, and I'll ask you a couple more questions. So tell me, in a world of automation, how do you think we keep really human responsibility at the center? And I know it's something you're working with and at all the time, but tell our audience how can they participate in doing that, please.
Right. So, I mean, I think that human responsibilities, I guess there's a couple of different ways to approach that question. I mean, one is that people are very concerned that the machines are going to make all the decisions and then who's responsible. And so, for sure, human beings are responsible. Just like animals cannot be moral agents. They don't have the wherewithal to take responsibility. So too, machines that don't have a soul or what's known as second order phenomenal consciousness that they can experience the world, they don't have the capability to take responsibility. What that means is that when we put an autonomous vehicle on the road, it's the human beings that are responsible. When we set off an autonomous weapon, it's the human beings that are responsible. The question is, which human beings? So, like, I mean, there's huge discussions about autonomous vehicles, right? Is it the designers? Is it the car manufacturer? Is it the owner of the car? Who is really responsible? At the end of the day, I did hear one good answer that I think really makes a lot of sense, and it's the government. Because at this point, the car as an autonomous vehicle becomes part of the country's infrastructure. You can't blame the driver, you can't blame the car manufacturer. I mean, they could have insurance and they could be semi responsible, but at the end of the day, it's the country that has now taken responsibility for putting these things in it's by and large public transportation at some level. And the same
Mhm.
thing with autonomous weapons. I mean, it's the government that's decided to deploy them. And if there's something that goes wrong, God forbid, so there's human beings that are responsible. And so, that's what I mean by human beings are responsible for autonomous systems. You mentioned, like, how can people in an everyday way be responsible? I think that we need to use technology in a responsible way. MIT came out with this study recently about how people, they did, like, brain probes and people writing a paper versus having ChatGPT write it, and your brain doesn't work. You have the machine do it, and so you don't think anymore. So that's irresponsible. We need to understand that in this sense, AI needs to be an assistant. AI needs to help us. Yeah, we can offload everything, and then what happens is what's called de-skilling. Use it or lose it. And so, yeah, it's not an easy question because we all like to do things the easy way, and it could be very detrimental. And I would say that's irresponsible use of technology.
I'm so glad you said that, because one of the main things and missions of global AI is really to empower people and understand that they individually have a responsibility in how they engage and interact with this technology, right? And not just using it to outsource their thinking everything that they do, as much as it's, really exciting to think that we have a seat at the table with these brilliant minds, so to speak, and that there's so much that we can automate. But the fact that every individual with every keystroke is impacting how this evolves and what comes. So I really, really so appreciate you saying that, and bringing your voice to this, and beyond. So, okay, we will close it out with if you could offer just one piece of wisdom really to help leaders navigate this AI era with integrity, what would that one piece of wisdom be?
So I think that the one piece of wisdom for leaders and followers, for all of us involved in this new technological world, I would say that it's to combine Atom One and Atom Two. I think that that's the most important. If you force me to say one idea, it's we all need to address our Atom One and our Atom Two. And it's not like the hermit is Atom Two and the city dweller is Atom One. We are all both, and we need to combine them. And the reason we need to combine them is because AI is so full of promise and peril. And the two together, Atom One and Atom Two, can make sure that we avoid the peril and that we bring about the promise.
Amazing. Amazing. Well, I really appreciate all your wisdom, and thank you for sharing such deep and powerful insight. Like I said, your voice really, it brings something sacred and necessary to the world and to the summit, and helping us remember that how we build isn't just about innovation, but about integrity is so, so important. So I'm incredibly grateful that you're a part of this conversation and for taking the time. Thank you. I,
No
of course,
problem.
want to let all our listeners know they can find you at devraynavon.com, right?
Correct.
devraynavon.com. And I will include that in the emails. And I thank you so much. I really appreciate your time and all that you're doing. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you for the platform. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. I will stop
Okay.
recording.